And hello, welcome everybody. So it's AngryJoe, and I'm sitting with Shams and Fred, who is the CEO of Paradox Interactive, and I guess we are going to have a little session, a little talk about Paradox and what kind of company it is. And I just think it's cool that you guys would let me, just sit with you and basically grill you on, what your company's all about. Now, I got to make a confession. I have, some favorite companies, and I'd say, Paradox Interactive and CD Projekt Red are gaming companies that I can really get behind. I'm like, these are the guys I want to support. These are the people that I think have the same values that I do. But obviously, as a company, there are some successes and there are some failures and some things that I just have always wanted to ask. So if you don't mind, Fred, are you a pathological liar?
No, that is the question of the day in the games industry, isn't it?
It is.
I would say, Joe, that you would need to define pathological and also define liar before I can reply.
Okay, just no corporate bullshit here, okay? Transparency is the name of the game.
No, I wouldn't say I am. I try to be as honest as I can and be upfront with what we do well and what we do not do so well. And I think that as a company, we've improved a lot in the last 3-4 years, and you've followed us for the last 5-6 years, and it's been a really great journey. And I think that what we're showing here at ParadoxCon 15 has been the best lineup we've ever had. So I'm really proud to show the games we have.
Yeah, and so I mean, I've been to a few Paradox conventions, and there have been a few games that I've gotten really hardcore about. One personally that I really enjoyed and was really looking forward to was Sword of the... Shams is shaking his head. No, I've already grilled him about it, but I'm going to grill him on camera. Sword of the Stars 2. What the fuck happened? It literally came out completely broken. Was this just a push it out the door, fuck it mentality? What happened there?
You want to do this?
I can do that. There are a few different reasons why you ship a game before it's ready. In this case, it was mostly a financial issue. We couldn't really finish the game as good as we wanted to do it. And another thing is that we didn't have enough producers to actually take a good look at the game and actually decide whether the game was good or not. I think we thought the game was in better shape than it actually was.
Really? Does nobody at Paradox play something before it comes out? What happened to QA?
We had too little QA, and that's the thing. Like Magica was another game that when it was released, it was horribly broken.
Yes, I liked it. I even showed that in my review. Like connections online, completely broken.
Right, but still to this date, like we ask people here, like did you have a problem with Magica? Like 3 out of 10 people say like I've never encountered a bug, and that's pretty amazing. And the thing is,
you want to see the statistics?
Yeah, I want to see that.
Some of the stars is that okay? We in the office we never really experienced like crash, broken. So there was a part.
That cannot be true, Shams. Don't give me that crap. You look in the tech tree, there were missing art in the tech tree. Nothing functioned. You'd go into battle mode and ships would just start flying off in the distance. You guys clearly didn't play the game and you shoved it out the door.
Yeah,
so are you guys going to tell me?
That's
true?
That is true.
Wow, I have no idea what to say after that admission. Okay, don't do that shit again.
No, the thing is that after Sword of the Stars 2, when we kind of we figured that we need a good, solid financial plan to support our products, and that was the main lesson learned. Now,
did you issue refunds to the people that wanted it?
We did refunds to everyone who wanted a refund.
Okay.
We continued to patch the game for a long time. And
yeah, for almost a year after release, and it was...
I think it was several years actually after release that we patched the game, and we gave away a lot of things for free. Now, this does not excuse the fact that it was broken on release. I'm not saying that, but at least we finalized the game at some point, a year later or so, with all the patches. But we also learned that we need a more solid financial base if we're going to undertake third-party projects. And so we rearranged a lot in the financial department, and we took more time to actually calculate how long does it take to actually finish a game. And that is something that we went through in several different ways with.
So it's partially your guys' fault that you didn't give enough time to development? Is that what you're saying? And from now on you will delay a game if it needs more time? And how does that affect you as a company, delaying a game, versus pushing it out the door?
So from a business perspective, slipping a game is really, really bad. What it does immediately is that it short-term hurts your income. You don't have money to then spend on additional games, so everything's just postponed. Long-term, it's really bad as well because it means that you can't start other projects and there are big gaps in the number of releases. And you probably, if you look at the Paradox release calendar, we haven't released a lot of third-party titles from between May of last year until March now with Pillars of Eternity. We released one third-party title. That's too little. And the reason for that is because of like hiccups in the financials and stuff. So you definitely need to go into like Peter Molyneux says, game development is hard, right? And predicting proper development cycles is hard. It's not impossible, but it is hard. So what we've done is that we've gone in with the mentality that okay, we should be prepared for stuff potentially slipping. And what also helps is not announcing games too early. Like we announced Rune Master too early. That was another problem. You guys had this tendency to release games. I'd get excited about it. Rune Master was one of them. Yuan, he hyped me up on that game. He loved it. He was talking about all the lore and Norse mythology, and I was like, I've actually never played, in a game that, like, other than, some licensed crap from Thor and stuff like that. But anyway, so I was excited about that, and then all of a sudden there's this announcement, canceled. What happened to Rune Master? Yeah, and that was an, again, case
and
of
Cartel. And East vs. West.
Yes.
So this was a pattern from you guys where you're announcing games and canceling them.
And I think these, on one hand, a lot of more canceled games. On the other hand, Metacritic released a list of mid-tier publishers and the quality of their titles, and we were number 2 on that list, ahead of 2K, Capcom, Konami, a bunch of really big companies.
So number 2 on the Metacritic, like,
the
customer
Metacritic,
satisfaction?
No, the Metacritic.
Publisher, mid-tier publisher.
Product quality. Number 2 for 2014. Mid-sized publishers. And so there's definitely...
And that takes into consideration all games or just your internal studio? Because even the games like Gettysburg that came out on Metacritic with a 22%.
Yeah, but that was in 2012. Right?
13%? 12%?
What? The year before. No, but like here's the thing. Like when our development cycles look like this, we start the project and then we develop it until we reach a point called proof of concept. Okay? After proof of concept, we move on to alpha, and then beta, and then we finally release it. The idea is, for the first phase, you want to prove the concept. You want to prove the fun factor in the game. And if it's not fun, you either send it back and do another proof of concept, or you kill it off. And this is how a lot of other publishers did it. Like Mirror's Edge, for instance, EA sent it back a couple of times before it was good enough, and they sent it on. Our problem was perhaps that, and in the case of Rune Master, we announced it before we proved the fun factor. So we kept doing it, and we gave the team another try, and they tried different things, and we kept going for a long time. But ultimately, we ended up in a situation where we're like, this isn't fun enough. This isn't fun enough, and it's going to take us way too long to reach a point where we think it is going to be fun. And you spend a lot of money, and then you end up in a situation where, like, do we want to keep spending money, or do we want to move on to, say, other games, hypothetically, a game in a Roman setting or something like that. So ultimately we had to decide not to move on, and it didn't really pass muster.
And right now, at this particular convention, there was actually no announcements of any new games.
That's right.
And that was purposeful because of your new policy?
Exactly. So we're saving some juicy stuff for later.
Later this year?
Later this
to be
year,
announced?
absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
that's
We
cool.
have a few titles that we think are going to hit really well with our target audience.
Another thing here is that DLC. Let's talk a little bit about DLC and your company's policy towards it. Obviously, it's a really hot topic amongst gamers right now. I hate to go back, but CD Projekt Red is an example of a company, in my opinion, that's doing things right. That before a game even comes out, they've announced 15 free DLCs. That makes everybody excited. People pre-order the game, they go out and buy it, or for sure they're going to go out and buy it because they know this company is going to be supporting the game post-release with free content, not not nickeling and diming everybody for little tiny packages and things here. So what are your guys, I mean, what do you guys think about that, and what's your DLC policies at Paradox
You have a
Interactive?
great answer for this. You just covered
Well,
it
the thing
all.
is that we have been releasing free content in different forms since 1998 when the Sverige 3 came out. And when we released Europa Universalis 2 in 2001, we continued to support it with 18 patches, lots of free content for all the patches. 7 years after release was the last patch. And one of our challenges lately has been that when we release a DLC package, say Charlemagne for CK2 that came out in October, is that we're not really good at packaging all the free stuff that we give away. So when you see CD Projekt Red saying we're giving away 16 free DLCs, that's great. I love CD
Great
Projekt
PR.
as well. And it's great PR.
Great
It's just that we suck at PR in that aspect because we give away a lot of free content. 50 to 70% of every DLC is actually free. And then the rest you pay for and you unlock different things in the game. So if you bought Crusader Kings 2 3 years ago when it came out on Valentine's Day, which is kind of funny in itself with CK2 coming out on Valentine's Day, you have a totally different game today. It's a much bigger, it's a much more full experience
Thanks to the
of
free
CK2.
DLC.
Thanks to all the
Is
free
it
stuff.
actually free DLC you're doing,
yeah.
or you're just doing patches to
So what's the
put
difference
features to
between-
where they're
what's-
supposed to
no,
be?
No.
Okay.
What's the difference between a free feature, a free content, or something that's called a DLC and it's on a separate list and you have to click download to get it? Like, It's the same. Like what we really need to do, instead of calling a patch, patch 1.3456 and we'll build R blah blah blah, we should call it, Valve is really great with this. They do it great with it with TF2. They do like the medic update. It's called the medic update. It's a branded thing, or it's called the Bloom update.
Oh,
of
an
the
update.
Spring or whatever.
With new content in addition to fixing all the
Exactly,
issues
but
that
they
Yeah.
package it in a way so you realize you're getting something for free. Somebody said today, like when you look at their Crusader Kings 2 page, all you see is a game and a crap load of DLC, but you don't see all the bajillion more other things that we've actually put in the game for free. And we're not talking fixes; it's actual updates.
And Joe, you have a point there that you have to separate in between fixing what is broken in the game, because our patch are like two-sided. It's part of it is obviously fixing things that are wrong in the game, because the game will always have bugs. No matter how long you work on the game, it will still have some bugs that needs to be fixed. But there's also a portion of actual free content that we're giving away.
And how do you guys feel about day one DLC? Because a lot of gamers are concerned that you'll get a complete experience and then a company will cut a slice of the game away. Like, I love the Total War franchise. Everybody knows that I buy those games, period. But I'm very vocal about some of the ways they present their pre-order stuff.
Yeah.
So taking a chunk of some factions or some games that normally we would have got free a few games ago, now all of a sudden, if you don't pre-order or you don't pay $8, you don't get that at day one. So there's this danger of publishers asking developers, or developers maybe themselves, cutting content. How do you guys feel about day one DLC in that sense?
It's a bit of a challenge because it depends on who you ask. If you look at the raw numbers, a big part of the silent community want day one DLC. They'll buy day one DLC. They won't complain about it, and they will want more. This is something that we see in the numbers. I was at a GDC talk where Bioware talked about how the massive day one controversy around Mass Effect 3, day one DLC, right? Massive controversy. The attachment rates for day one DLC was over 50%. So despite this being a huge issue, a lot of people are still buying it. That's one thing. So the question is,
make it right?
no, but like, but the money is one aspect of it because it keeps you ongoing. So maybe it's not the fact that day one DLC is released. We did day one DLC for Europa Universalis 4 when it was released, but it didn't cause a shitstorm, and it wasn't because we're a small publisher or it's a small niche game, because it's how you actually do it, right? It's what type of DLC you do, right? And the other part of it is that, and I'm not going to speak for the other publishers and developers and how they do it, but how we do is that we sit down and say, okay, this is the game, right? Are we happy with this being product X or Hearts of Iron 4? And then say, okay, then that's the game we're going to make. Then we start making the game. And we know from the time we finish the game until, from that point on, we know that we will be making DLC because people are asking for DLC. And there are a lot of things that we say that...
You guys have received criticism for Crusader Kings 2, which has... I don't know how many DLC
Like
packs. The games is
$150
like,
worth of DLC.
Yeah, it could be like a $300 game.
But-
How exactly do you
I've
justify
seen
that?
that classic meme online that is like the Mona Lisa released in the 16th century and now released like DLC 1, DLC 2,
Oh, I
where you
saw
cut out
that
pieces.
picture.
Yeah.
This is the way gaming was,
that's
and now
BS.
it's...
Yeah, I think that's not really entirely true, because if CK2 is Mona Lisa that was released 3 years ago, now you don't have just Mona Lisa, you have a Monet and you have a Van Gogh painting as well that you got for
I
free.
think that
And then you
Crusader
could
Kings-
buy an extra copy of Mona Lisa as well. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
not the same
Crusader
thing.
Kings 2 isn't the same as some of the other examples,
Right,
though,
right,
because
right.
Crusader Kings 2, as a grand strategy game, simulates quite a huge chunk. So it was a complete experience when it came out.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
some of these DLCs will add on to it. What we're saying is some of the games, you know, that is in development and it seems like some faction specifically
Yeah,
cut
yeah.
out
Right.
in order to sell.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you guys ever do something?
No,
like
absolutely
No, no,
not.
no.
We know
No,
we
it's
definitely
important.
try to avoid that, and we also really, and this was learned during the Magica days, is that we never want to release stuff that divides the community, right? So we try to release a game that's a core game that's solid, and then we add modules to this. So for instance, the expansions for CK or EU. Like one adds like the Muslim faction, or it adds the Indian nation. It doesn't really relate to Crusader Kings, which is Western European Christian kings. That's what the game is about, right? And then we have other
Well,
expansions.
Crusaders crusade into the Muslim
Into the land,
territory.
but
it
it
seems
doesn't
like
have anything to do with India,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
So we've added different things to it that are just expand on the experience, but the core experience is very solid. But so that's our approach, and I think that Dean Hall, Rocket, that made DayZ, he just tweeted earlier today about how DLC is ruining a lot of games, and somebody tweeted back and said, "Oh, but Paradox has a right way of doing it," and he said, "Yes, that's a good way of doing."
Yeah,
DLC.
and in my opinion, DLC. I'm not against DLC. I'm against bad DLC,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah, exactly.
If the content I'm given to me is good enough, has additional features, and is worth the price, and I already love the game, I have no problem buying DLC.
And I think that what we're talking about actually is monetization and how you view monetization, because when we discuss monetization, how should we charge for things, for our games and for our DLC? The most important thing is that you don't charge when people are frustrated about something. You say like missing factions. If we would release a game called Viking Kings and you couldn't play as a Viking because you had to unlock it apart from the original game, that would be a terribly frustrating moment, right? Or if you lose all your lives in, say, a match 3 game on your iPhone.
Don't get me started on the mobiles.
And you can buy 5 new lives. Like,
Yeah.
that is monetizing on people's frustration. We want people to pay for things when they're hyped up and want to play the game and feel like this is a good investment in my time.
How do you
in
guys
my
feel
game,
about
you
the
know.
mobile games now and the Super Bowl? I was watching the Super Bowl and they had like 3. There was 3 separate ads for these crap mobile games. Of course, it's my opinion, but these timer, they're not really games. You get Games of War with Kate Upton riding around with her, it's just and that's not even in the game. My friends are like, "Whoa, what game is that, Joe?" I'm like, "It's shit. It's utter shit." And yet these games make that much money to where they're able to pay $4 million in Super Bowl
I know,
ads.
good for them, right? I mean, our philosophy.
Good for them.
Like it doesn't affect
I
us.
wouldn't be.
Everyone, like a lot of companies make money by making mines that are directed towards children. I don't know. That's their money to make. Like our philosophy when it comes to mobile games is that we don't make games that you play on 9 minutes on your way to.
I'm
to
just
your
worried
work.
about that those tactics are going to start seeping on over into our AAA games, which I've already been seeing. I've
Yes.
seen it in Dragon Age. I've seen it in Ubisoft's games, Assassin's Creed. That's why the
Yeah,
only
but we're
reason
not
why I
AAA.
bring that up. Well, let's talk a little bit about your philosophy for what goes in to a Paradox game and what makes a Paradox game. Can you tell me about what
So-
makes a Paradox game?
Yeah, I think that what really sets us apart from mobile games is
Because
that
it seems like you guys are very. What I wanted to say is that Paradox seems like it's catering to a niche market, and if you're always making these very niche games and very off-the-wall ideas that other companies may not try. Like, you know, I mentioned Gettysburg earlier, Salem, Dungeon Land. These are games that seem completely crazy. I don't think any of the bigger companies would do games like that. You know, how does that fit into, you know, what you guys are doing? You do that purposefully, just targeting niche?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the company started as an indie developer that made really weird map-based strategy games, right? And we've kind of spun that onto other genres, and what we try to do essentially in all our games is hit a number of what we call core game pillars. We want the games to be replayable, we want them to be hardcore, we want them to be modular so you can add different components to them.
Oh, they're hardcore, Shams.
Yeah.
They're hardcore.
Yeah.
I played Hearts of Iron 4, and you know how excited I was about that one, but it intimidated the hell out of me when I got into that. You guys are going to need to hire a whole separate company or team just to do a tutorial of all tutorials to teach the rest of us. See, I'm worried that maybe because it's so niche, you guys are only catering to that particular niche. Have you ever thought about opening up, you know, bringing more people into the grand strategy?
I'd say that we try to make the games. We will always make niche games, but we want the niche games to have the potential to break out. So, I mean, is Crusader Kings a niche game? How do you define a niche game? It's a niche game when it comes to the gameplay, but it sold over 1 million copies, and that kind of is it still niche when you've had that many sold copies? And we have different parts of the portfolio. We have titles that are more niche, and then more that are more mainstream, I'd say. Like Magicka 2, definitely more mainstream, also coming to consoles. You won't see Crusader Kings on a console any day soon. But a game like Hollow Point, also a bit broader. Pillars of Eternity, also broader. So different parts of it, I think. But generally the philosophy is that modular, we want sandbox experiences. We don't want to necessarily tell a story. We want the players to play our games and tell a story themselves. Create a story and then share it on the forums and different stuff.
Being an independent publisher, I find it interesting and it's so cool that you guys are sitting down and answering these questions. Does it scare you guys when you have when you take a bet and you have a colossal failure on a game like, you know, I don't know, like Sword of the Stars 2 or Gettysburg, just going out on a limb for one of these crazy ideas? Does it make you more hesitant to do those, to work with independent developers and crazy ideas?
Well, it's not necessarily the crazy ideas that scare me the most, actually, because crazy ideas are crazy ideas, and I'm kind of driven by the idea. I mean, I want to see more goat simulators out there. I think that's a great idea, and I think it's a great execution. And what scares me the most is, like, we open up the pre-order for City Skylines, and it's going great. Like, it's breaking previous records, and it's just rolling in, like, all the pre-orders. Then I start, like, first you worry about the pre-order. Is this really going to take off? And then it does. So then you start worrying about the release. So, how's the release going to go now? And when the release is done, if that's successful, you're going to be like, how are we going to support this game? You know, so it never really ends. Yeah. So the anguish you feel never really ends. So, but it's a good thing. That's what drives us forward as well, is that you feel all the time that you want to do the best for the game in every aspect. So you start worry for the next milestone of the game and its life cycle. And well, it's a good and a bad feeling at the same time. It's really hard to describe. And since you're driven by passion, you tend to take a lot of the setbacks very personally. Yeah. It's like when you fail at something, it's like, oh my God, I signed that contract, I scouted that game, I vetted that developer. I was a part of designing. Hopefully I don't design that many games anymore. But it's a very, very personal thing as well. And it's hard. Like, it's hard to take all that criticism when it comes out.
We don't want to turn into a company that just does sequels, right? Fred says this when we argue sometimes with our CFO, because he likes sequels, because you can clearly calculate out the stuff. And it's like, we can see how much money we can make.
I say we're not going to be a company that suffers from the sequelitis.
Yeah, and because he says that if I wanted that kind of company, I would have started Western Scaffolding. It's very predictable business.
That is still like my retirement. I'm going to start a scaffolding company in New York. It seems to be scaffolds all over New York.
My backup plan is QA lead again. In AAA.
I thought you were QA lead here. How was that?
Anyway, you have to take risks not to become that kind of weird company. And that's why, given the chance, again, I would probably sign some of the worst disasters in the company history, but maybe not sign them at the same time and maybe actually give them the devotion, resources they need, and not be a bit naive about, you know, this solo developer is going to make it. He doesn't need any kind of help from us, he or she.
And conceptually, I think Dungeon Land is one of the best games we've ever signed.
Yeah, no,
I think conceptually
really
it's
like
great.
that concept. Now you look all over the place, and asymmetrical gameplay, 4 versus 1, Overlord versus players is taken off. You got Evolve. There was there's
A
been
new
a few
D&D
other-
game was announced
BioWare
yesterday.
was about to do one. I think it got
And
canned.
execution wasn't half bad either. I mean, the game came out okay, and it just didn't really take off.
And the question is, maybe if Dungeon Land had 6 more months of development, what would have the case been then? But the problem was, again, we'd announced it very early. It had all really slipped once. It was over budget. Like like you can always keep spending money on a project, right? But there's a point where you're like, we have to do something, right? And then was it good enough? Maybe. Should we have released it at that time? I don't know. Should we have focused more on the Dungeon Master mode? And like, you start making a game and you don't always know what the best part of your game is. Like I said this the other day, like I think every game, the games that we make and release is actually the worst version of the game, because then we patch it and improve it, and then the fans start modding it, and then it really takes off. Every game has a Dota built into it, right? It started as a mod for Warcraft 3, and it took off, and Dota is arguably much bigger than Warcraft 3, right?
And how important is your community to you guys? I just did a visit to your offices. I was a little surprised because, and I don't know if this was a setup, I walked around and I saw people, you know, working on their games and stuff, and they had a second screen up, and they were on the forums, just like interacting with people on Paradox forums. Is that something that you guys do all the time? How valuable is player feedback? How often does that go and translate to actual features into your game? You know, stuff like that.
The forum is a big source of inspiration for us, and we communicate directly with our fans, and we want everyone at Paradox to have a forum account, so they should be able to answer questions. And a lot of the teams are really active. Some of the third-party teams are really active, not all of them. But if you take a look at what Colossal Order is doing with City Skylines, they're really active in our forums as well.
Their
Reply to
CEO is
questions,
in the threads answering questions.
I've seen that.
And that is really good. And that's the kind of company that we want to create. That we want to be transparent in the way that people can ask us, why are you choosing to do things in this direction? And then we can answer back saying like, these are the thoughts behind it. You can agree or disagree, but the reasoning behind it is this.
And how often do you change games based on feedback while they're in development? Or are you more a company that says, you know, I know specifically what type of game it needs to be, and I'm not going to take feedback or change things?
We take
or do
feedback.
you actually?
It's a give and take. Obviously, we have a vision and we're trying to hit it, but we listen to feedback. You don't want to end up in a situation where you're like, kind of a George Lucas syndrome, where you stop listening to everyone around you, and it's like, oh, it's my vision. No, I don't care about anything else.
And now I'm excited about Star Wars Episode 7 because we'll see something
It can't get
new.
any worse, right?
Wow.
All right, we're talking about community. If you guys don't mind, I got my smartphone here, and I'd like to take some questions from chat, if that's all right.
Yeah, we'll take from the chat.
Let's see if I can pull it up here, if I can get connection down here. So chat, if you guys want to go ahead and submit some questions.
Uncomfortable, hard questions, please.
Make them uncomfortable. If you didn't think I hit them hard enough, hit them harder.
Some really tough ones.
All right, let's see. They're talking about Star Wars can't get any worse, Paradox 2015.
I did not say anything about Star Wars. I didn't even watch episode 1, 2, and 3.
He loves Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah. That was my biggest mistake. Have I told you about that, Joe?
Vicky 3! Everybody's screaming
Vicky 3. I can tell you this much.
Victoria 3.
That's the camera, right? Vicky 3 people.
Camera.
I'm looking at you. Or is that the camera?
No, it's not.
That camera. The thing with Vicky 3 is that when we start a project at PDS, I say we, I'm not a part of the studio. I don't design the games. I don't really do any work directly in the games, but we need to have internal champions who are super dedicated to the title and really want to do the title. And when that day comes, that a bunch of people feel really dedicated to Victoria 3 and want to carry that game into the greatest simulator of the Industrial Revolution ever in eternity, the game is going to happen. Is that right? Was that a good summary?
And that's how it works. Like, of course we want to make Victoria 3, but it's all about somebody in the creative team having a strong enough vision and feeling, you know what, it feels like the right time to start doing it. But if you don't have a champion for it, it's hard to get that off the ground.
What the hell happened to East versus West?
It wasn't good enough. That's simple. And the thing was, we started making that game such a long time ago, and it was an external team, and they worked on our engine, and I'm sure we could have supported them a lot better. But the thing was, while they were making the game, Paradox went through the phase with Sword of the Stars and a bunch of these things, and we realized we have to increase our quality. So we increased our quality bar, and they kept making that original game that they were making, and they struggled, and we realized this is not going to pass muster. It's not going to make it to the quality standards that we've come to expect from our games. Like, everyone told us, stop releasing broken games that are unbalanced, that are not working, and we realized, you know what, our standards are just too high. And it didn't feel fair to the developers or our fans to keep on going. So it was a necessary thing to do.
And that same, and I was actually looking on Paradox Extra, which I recently discovered, which I think is pretty cool, because you guys had some Ask Me type sessions, and you actually did a YouTube video, and you can find it out there, where you had announced a game, Cartel. It was supposed to be this Syndicate-like game, and it sort of capitalized on the fact that people got pissed off that Syndicate was a first-person shooter instead of being the old-school thing. You guys were like, we're going to do one, and that video sort of highlighted what happened and how it fell apart. I think that's cool, and I think that type of honesty and that type of feedback, even if it didn't get a hell of a lot of views, it's there for when people want to see it. And being that honest and open with fans, I don't think there's anything negative to it.
It comes back to your previous question. Like, we are gamers ourselves, and we buy games and then we play them. And
you guys don't have shareholders, right? So you get to do
it's a privately held company.
You guys get to do what the games you all want to do.
But what happens when we play a game that's buggy and broken? You do what everyone does. You go onto the Steam forums, or you go to the game forums, and you try to look for answers. And what you basically want on release when a game isn't working is somebody that listens, right? And I've experienced this tons of times myself. Bought a AAA game, tried to play it, I just couldn't, broken, whatever. Try to find an answer. There's nobody in sight. Not the developers, not the publishers, no community managers, social media forums, nothing. So over a weekend, I'm like, what am I supposed to do? And we take that experience back when we release games, and we realize, okay, we're going to screw up. It's going to happen sooner or later. But what can we do when we screw up is the next best human thing, which is say, we fucked up. We're sorry, and we're working.
That type of responsibility taken, I think gamers understand that, and when you do that, you kind of earn a little bit of that respect back. But acting like it didn't happen, or some of the statements like EA made after Dungeon Keeper Mobile, that kind of stuff upsets of the gamers. But here's a really good one. I hate to put you guys on the spot, but here we go. There's a good unofficial Game of Thrones mod for Crusader Kings 2. Possibly, can you guys make an official expansion with HBO and improve on it with models taken from the show, says Certifiable Nut?
Tell them the story. The 2005 story.
The thing is that I've been a fan of the book series since 2002.
Before they were cool.
I'm a Game of Thrones hipster, man.
I love the show. I love the show. I haven't read the book, so I'm the show, you're the books.
Yeah, I watched the first episode of the show, and I was like, no, it doesn't really match my inner feeling. Grand Strategy. I have, we had groups of journalists asking us questions, me and Susanna here during the course of 2 days, and the most asked question was, are you going to make a Game of Thrones game? And my reply to that was, first of all, I had a meeting booked with George R. R. Martin in 2005, dinner in London.
When he was a young man.
When George
R. R. Martin was a young, clean-shaven man.
Well, even I was a young man back then, so, things happen when you get older. But I had to cancel that because my grandmother passed away, really terrible, and I had to attend her funeral, and so we never booked a new meeting to actually discuss Game of Thrones. And
you should.
And where was I? Today, Paradox is not geared really to make licensed products from external sources, so I am not sure we can make a Game of Thrones game. I'll be honest and say I'm not sure we can actually handle licenses externally with the pressure and the expectations that HBO will put on us. But with that said, Game of Thrones is a perfect match for the CK2 engine.
Everyone loves Game of Thrones, right? But I add something else that ties into how how your philosophy as a businessman is essentially that you like to build things long term, right? You have a very long term perspective. You don't want to do stuff that's short term, and that's why we generally try to focus on building our own IPs instead of pouring our. It's going to be the same effort, blood, tears, sweat into a game, but if it's somebody else's IP, you're building somebody else long term rather than building ourselves.
I like the fact that you guys, put emphasis on original IPs. Obviously a lot of companies do the sequelitis thing, but I think at the same time, it would be really cool to have a company like yours that has the expertise in these grand strategies to do something that is IP that we all love. Is there going to be a new, what were you going to say?
No, I absolutely agree. And I'm a big Game of Thrones lover. And when I say this, it's a bit like with tears in my eyes.
Don't
that I'm
give
kind
up,
of,
guys. Okay,
no, you know what? I'll
call him again, set up another meeting, and show him Crusader Kings 2.
Well, you know what? I promise that I will look into the opportunities, but I think that we're not geared. Like my inner gut feeling tells me that we're not geared. And on the other hand, like I told you before, there needs to be a passion on the team to create a game. If there are no like Game of Thrones hipsters in
Your
the
whole
PDS
office is filled with Game of Thrones fans.
Yeah. Those details, right?
All right, well, if it's not going to be Game of Thrones, or if you're going to look into the possibility of that in the future, what somebody asked, are we going to see a new Grand Strategy IP, a new time era from you guys in the future?
Can they define a new time era? What do you think, Rome?
There are a lot of we'll say this, like one of the ambitions for the development studio is to cover the entirety of the timeline. We want you to be able to take
you guys are slowly going along
a nation from like 300 BC and like a small duchy or province, a new tribal village. You take that through the Roman times, you see Christ be born, you go through the Dark Ages, you go through the Crusader Wars, Renaissance, Victorian Age, World War II, boom, the entire thing. That is an ambition that we have, but the question is, when do we reach that point? When do we do it? That's that. Yeah.
And who is the internal champion to do it?
Yeah.
Everybody's screaming Rome 2.
It's not happening.
Is it?
No, there's so many other good Rome games. I don't see why we.
Future Uvernasalis.
Future, yeah. A sci-fi would be cool.
Tongue twister.
We love sci-fi. We know the dev team loves sci-fi. We know a lot of people.
I love sci-fi. Please.
Love to see Grand Strategy.
My heart is still hurt after Sword of the Stars too. So
the problem is not shortage of ideas. We have a bajillion good ideas. It's
Dinosaur Universalis.
Well, dinosaur. Like if you go back to the Krita period, for example, you could do a really good dinosaur strategy game. You never know.
Really?
So was there anything else that you guys were, at this convention that you were trying to convey and let people know about Paradox as a company, or what things you're striving for in the future for your company?
Well, that was a good question. I think we got most of it across, right? I mean, we really, really, really want to hear more from people regarding what they like to see from us. Mm-hmm. Like we actually, when we sit down and try to make the business decisions about what other games should we make, like Majesty 3.
Yeah, that'd be
Oh my God!
You and I talk about this
Majesty
all the time.
I talk about Majesty.
On the plane over here, the mobile version. You guys did the mobile version.
We licensed that to a Russian team called HeroCraft that made it. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it was fun on the plane over
that's
here.
The
I
thing,
would love to see an actual sequel.
And we talk about that often. There's a giant thread on the Steam forums where they're ripping me to pieces because I said that we're probably not going to do a Majesty 3 because likely there's not enough big of an audience today to do it. Whenever we look at it, how would we go about it? We would love to have co-op in Majesty 3, right?
Co-op would, the way I imagine Majesty 3 is co-op focused. And you could say it's the flavor of the day in the games industry, but I think that type of gameplay is very well suited to co-op. Find each other on the map, or kill this kingdom, or do this and do that.
I don't know, maybe some kind of Dark Souls multiplayer. I don't know. There are different ways of going about it.
You know, you guys have been actually. That's a good point. I've seen more and more titles coming to consoles from Paradox. You've got Magicka 2 coming to PS4.
Yeah,
correct.
Hollow
Point coming to PS4. Not Xbox One on either of those.
No.
Is this going to be a trend that you guys are going to make more and more console games, or you guys?
Like I said, we had some titles in the portfolio are very niche-y.
Are they always going to be on PC, and then?
They are probably always going to be on PC, and then we have the titles that are more mainstream. And whenever we sign one of those titles, we try to always make sure you can move it to other platforms. And it's not only consoles, but tablets as well. I think we're woefully behind when it comes to tablet releases. There should be a Grand Strategy game from Paradox on tablets. We've been saying this for 3 years.
I agree. I agree.
I agree. I'm the first one to sign that. It's just that, again, like, the PDS team, they have a lot of independence on what they create, and that's the way it should be. It's a talented team full of good individuals.
We don't want to mess with them.
You don't want to go in and tell them like make a Victor 3, like it needs to come from the people who make the games. So if you tell someone there like you should make Crusader Kings for tablets, they would be like, okay, it's basically a project where changing the UI is the big deal. Getting it to run on an iPad and then changing the UI. So it's not necessarily the gameplay challenge that people are looking for when they develop a game. So you just need to find someone who's really like passionate about bringing Crusader Kings to a tablet.
Yeah.
And then it's a done deal. But we're not really there yet.
Yeah,
but I would love to see that because I play a lot
and here's
of
the
games
thing
on my
with
tablet.
PlayStation, the reason why we're doing PlayStation is that the type of games we do them in a modular fashion, we update them, we give them away tons of content. To be able to do that, we need to have fair amount of free control over our games. And the last console generation, you had to like pay for patches, and it was quite tricky, right? And certification was tricky as well. So when the new console generation rolled around, Sony were very accommodating in their discussions. Were quite open and honest and said, you guys make weird games and we want weird games.
Yeah, that's cool. I like the fact that Sony wants more of that kind of
There was no drama around that, and we
Yeah.
said, okay, but screw you because we can't patch our games. And they said, well, we're changing that. And we said, then fine, no problem. And that's we're bringing Magicka, we're bringing Hollow Point, and we're looking other games in development.
But important,
right now.
it's still important to remember.
An announcement.
What?
Give us an announcement. Dang it.
Is there something you want to say?
No, I just said that we have other games in development that we have.
Is there something you want to say, friend?
It's important to remember that we're first and foremost a PC games company. PC, Mac, Linux, that's our home. That's what we feel comfortable in doing, and that's where we find our audience as well. And we're going to do some like stuff together with Sony now, a few games. Did you say 2 or how many did you say? 2 to begin with?
And up to at least.
Yeah, up to 2
maybe
games.
one.
Yeah, up to 2 games. And if that works out, we'll continue with Sony and work with them on more games, and maybe with Xbox as well if they're interested in working with us. But we're always going to release on PC because that's where we come from.
Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys.
Is that it?
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think it's it.
It is.
It is it.
That is it.
Cool.
It's really, really cool of you guys to sit down like this, and I don't know, it lets gamers peek into the process, maybe understand what's happening, and it feels good that there are some companies understand what it's like on this side. So appreciate y'all taking the time to speak with us, and guess we'll check y'all
Thanks
later.
for watching.
Thank you.
Ping us on Twitter and the forums and tell us what you don't like about us and like.
Game of Thrones.
Game
We
of
need to
Game of
see
Thrones.
that.
Warhammer.
Or Grand Strategy
Warhammer
Sci-Fi.
40K?
I want to see that.
Is that what you said earlier today?
If you guys could do something for Warhammer.
We're not going to do it.
What?
Oh, no
Do what?
Warhammer stuff.
Warhammer 40K Grand Strategy game?
That would be amazing.
We're not going to do it.
In a distant future,
There
there's only war.
Grand Strategy.
There's only Grand Strategy.
Oh my god, that would be freaking amazing if you guys did something like that.
We would do it. Eldars.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
It's-
I'm more of a
the
space marine.
lore is just
Imperial
perfect
Fist.
for it. All right.
They're yellow. They are.
yellow. Is that a euphemism or is it?
Are we still live?
Are we live?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
I thought we were.
Straight face.
I almost announced Rome.
No, it was like the.
Rome 3 or
Rome
no, it's
3
Rome 2.
coming,
Rome 2.
yeah.
You skipped 2.
If we announce it, we'll do both at the same time. Rome 2 and Rome 3, and just 18 months in advance.
Okay.
Okay.
An actual wrap up. Okay.
Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, this-
Oh, well, I thought we already wrapped it up. Well, thank you guys
yeah.
so much for coming out, and we appreciate y'all showing up on the Twitch stream, and I guess we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Prosper.